Hello, my name is Scott Graves, and today I'm going to tell you how you can start playing Dungeons and Dragons. Now, some people might think that Dungeons and Dragons is just a weird little game played by a bunch of losers in a dark basement somewhere. And while that may have been the case back in the 70s when the game was first released, it is no longer the case. As a matter of fact, last year alone, over 10 million people got together and watched different people stream D&D on different sites such as Twitch and YouTube. To understand what Dungeons and Dragons is, it is generally a dice-based tabletop role-playing game. This means that all of your stats, so to call them, are usually listed on a piece of paper, and all the decisions you end up making, the determining factor of them will be the roll of a dice, a d20 or a 20-sided die. Now, D&D itself was published in 1974 by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, and it was notable because it deviated from its previous wargame style tabletop role-playing games that were around before it. So to get started on playing D&D, the best way to do it is to obtain a set of the rules. Now, back in 2014, when the current edition of Dungeons & Dragons first came out, the best way to do this would be to get a player's handbook. Nowadays, there's been so many extra things released for the current edition that you'd need to get a starter or essentials kit to play more efficiently in the game as it is now. What would also be very helpful is to get a set of dice, which includes a 4-sided dice, a 6-sided dice, an 8-sided dice, two 10-sided dice, a 12-sided dice, and the most important, your 20-sided die. Now, if you can't get your hands on a nice set of dice, or even a cheap set of dice, you can always use something like a digital dice roller. So, to start out getting ready to play, you'll have to first make your character. Now, your character will go into everything you see here on this sheet, which at first might seem incredibly complicated, but it can all be broken down into 3 main choices you have to make. First, you'll have to choose your race. D&D has so many races to choose from, I couldn't feasibly list them all out. I would get a lot of them mixed up and I would lose a few of them off the top of my head. But to put it simply, you have your common races, your humans, your elves, your dwarves, all the typical fantasy races that you'd see all over the place, your exotic races, which are rare and different, like demon people and bird people, and you take an animal and mix it with a person, and that's probably a race in D&D. Your monster races, which are things like goblins and orcs and lizards and the like, and your more setting-specific things like the Eberron and Runeloft campaigns. But that's more complicated. All you'd really need to do is find which race really suits you and pick that race for your character. Now, second, you'd need a class. There are 14 different classes available to choose from in D&D, 2 of which are not pictured here, the Blood Hunter and the Artificer. All the classes have something they specialize in. It can range anywhere from magic casting, weapon mastery, from speed to strength, and everything in between. No 2 characters will be exactly alike unless you purposely make them exactly alike. Anywhere from your strongest barbarian to your most clever and tricksy wizards and rogues. Finally, once you've got your class and race decided, you'll need to choose your background and backstory. To get a background, I've found better to write a backstory first. Your backstory can help you define your background for your character. Now, a good backstory can actually come from anything. It's all made up in your head. All of it. Just your imagination. Write yourself a story, find a character in that story, boom, there you go. It can be anything from a epic Lord of the Rings style quest from a book or a slightly silly Monty Python skit. Now, once you've got your character made and your backstory written out, to be able to start playing, you'll have to find a game to play in. Unfortunately, the game itself does not come pre-installed with friends. You'll need to find some for yourself. You can ask some friends you already have, see around if there's any local games in your area. You could even find games that are going online. I know that places like Facebook and Reddit and Instagram have groups that often chat and talk about playing D&D and D and setting up times. Overall, once you've got all of this taken care of, you will be right ready and set to play the game known as Dungeons and Dragons. I would like to thank you for listening to my speech, and may the dice ever roll in your favor.